What's going on YouTube? It's Teach back again with another video. Today, giving you an updated look at my 2-round NFL mock drafts on a ton of mock drafts put out this week. So I figured I would join the bunch and give y'all my updated outlook on the NFL draft. I'm going to do some things a little different and maybe think a little too far outside the box today. But hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you're new to the channel, want to see more draft and football content in general, just hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, most importantly, give me your takeaways on this mock draft down in the comment section. Who do you think I have to going too high? Who do you think I have fallen too far? Who's your favorite team? Who are some prospects you think would make great fits for your squad? Love to have your thoughts. I'd love to talk some ball with you down in the comment section. Let's go ahead and jump right into it, starting with Aiden Hutchinson as the #1 overall pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Get the idea for Evan Neal here, but whether it's Thibodeaux or Hutchinson, I think they are an improvement upon Kayvon Chason, and I'm a big Kayvon Chason believer, and maybe there's still a breakout on the horizon, but if not, he can become a designated pass rusher of the future. Hutchinson, Allen on the edge, try to bolster up that defense for years to come. And whoever doesn't go 1, I think goes 2. So Hutchinson 1, Thibodeaux 2. This is the same as my last mock draft. And again, the Lions are a team that also maybe they're looking at a different direction in regards to maybe going corner here. Maybe it's a Derek Stingley Jr. spot. I think he's going to regain some of the momentum he had early on in the process after, a really good combine, solid pro day, and maybe pairing him with Jeff Okudah makes Okudah's job a little easier, helps out Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, who I think has done a pretty good job considering the talent on his team. Additionally, you both acquired brothers. You still have Trey Flowers. He's probably cut, but there are still some pass rush pieces. Charles Harris is coming off a really good year for the Lions, so maybe edge isn't the perfect fit for when it comes to what you need. Maybe Stingley is more of that, but I think Thibodeau's the next best player on the board. You're picking #2 for a reason. Go BPA. On to #3. With the Houston Texans, thought about Derek Stingley Jr. here. Obviously, they had the in-season trade of Bradley Roby. Definitely could use some help in the secondary. But I think when you get a chance to get Evan Neal paired up with Laramie Tunsil, Neal has experience playing guard, both tackle spots. So I think for an offensive line that just honestly isn't all that great, you get the tackles figured out, you can patch up the inside, and I think Neal over at right tackle opposite of Laramie Tunsil is a place to go. And, Tunsil's making a ton of money. Maybe it's a long-term play, too. Could be that, replacement to Tunsil next contract negotiation time. Then we get to the Jets. I'm going with Derek Stingley Jr. here. I've said this, like a big proponent or a big antagonist for why people don't think that Stingley or Kyle Hamilton go to the Jets, especially with 2 picks inside the top 10, is because, Robert Saleh's defense is good enough at hiding and getting the most out of a lackluster secondary. But, it comes to mind because I've noted in another video, and it's relatively recent, a Jets-Dolphins game. I think it was week 16, week 17, somewhere in that area. Good game throughout, and then that game comes down to a final slant throw from Tua Tagovailoa, finds Devontae Parker, who gets away from Breece Hall. That's the touchdown that separates it. I think it was 31-24 final score. And that's the type of play where, Robert Saleh's defense is good at hiding where you don't have a whole lot of talent in the secondary. But eventually you got to man up somebody on the goal line, come up with a stop. And right now, I like Bryce Hall, but he's definitely more of a corner 2 to me. I think Derek Stingley Jr. could step in and be that CB1 shutdown guy and allow you to play some more man coverage, or even if it is still a zone-heavy scheme, a lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 4 for Saleh. I think he'll do great in that. Plus what you get out of him as a return man, potentially, and who knows? Maybe they're getting really creative, looking for playmakers, and play a little bit of wide receiver this year with LSU. Not that that's why you're drafting him, but just added spice to the mix. But I think Stingley gives this team CB1 that they desperately need. Then we get to the Giants, and the Giants are a really interesting team right now because they could pivot in so many different directions. Just fired Joe Judge, so they're hiring a GM and a new head coach. I, in a lot of ways, kind of hope they just elevate Patrick Graham. I think he's done a whole lot with that side of the football. And I just like him as a personality. He's getting head coaching buzz, too, so why not? Makes a little bit of sense. Brian Flores could also be in the mix, but that's not for this video. I think I'll do some head coaching content next week. If you are wondering what my takes on openings, vacancies, ranking that, who should fill in, I think I'll be doing that next week. Just kind of wanted to let the dust settle and figure out what other openings might be available, like the Houston Texans job that opened up after I would have recorded a video last week. Anyways, I'm going on a tangent. Let's go ahead and talk about the Giants here. I'm going to Ikem Ekwonu. Tough between him and Cross, and I don't think there's a wrong selection. The two of them are right there. The reason I go Ike Ekwonu is because he has the ability to kick inside to guard. Maybe Matt Parrott takes a huge step forward at right tackle. Ike can step inside and play left guard, which would be a pretty sizable upgrade at that position. But if you go cross and you play cross at left tackle, switch over Andrew Thomas to right tackle, or the other way around, you finally get Thomas playing good, maybe you don't want to move him from that left tackle spot. I think that makes sense. So either tackle makes, a ton of sense to me. And the same thing I talked about with the Texans, where if you have the two tackles, you can figure out the interior, which has really been the bigger issue for the Giants in a lot of ways. But Ike Ekwonu or Charles Cross with Andrew Thomas, you feel a whole lot better about that offensive line. And speaking of Cross, that's who I have the Carolina Panthers taking here. It's kind of surprising Cross is a little low on the Draft Network rankings here, but I think Cross is, future left tackle, franchise caliber guy at that position. Got a ton of true pass set reps at Mississippi State, that Mike Leach offense, and he held his own. And he showed he's more than just an athlete, but he's an athlete who is now proven to be a, polished left tackle. And those are hard to come by. Tackles are hard to come by, let alone good athletic ones that are proven to be sound and polished in pass protection. So Cross, definitely a guy who should go in the top, 6, 8, 10 range. And then we get back to the Giants, and this is one where I really deliberated on, and it's tough doing this video not knowing who's the next head coach, who's going to be the defensive coordinator, if not the head coach calling the defensive plays, like a Flores, maybe like a Patrick Graham if they just elevate him. So, schematically, I don't know. George Karlaftis is the best fit. I think Karlaftis is a little bit better suited for a 4-3 DN spot, but I do see the ability for him to stand up, play that 3-4 outside linebacker. What does he look like in coverage and playing in space? You're really just kind of defending the flats. So, pick and choose what you really need out of that spot. But this team does need edge help, and I think they're in a spot now where they go tackle, edge, and then we'll see what we do once we get to the second round. I'm excited to talk about that. It's as plays off of what I did in the first round. So that's kind of my thinking right now for the Giants. And quarterback could be in play here, but I think if you're a GM, you see what Daniel Jones is all about in year 4, and hey, maybe he gets a huge step forward because the offensive line's better, and that way they can maximize the weapons that they have. And then problem solved. You just got to sign him to what you think is a reasonable contract, which that could be tough in and of itself. But if not, it doesn't work out, then you have the chance to go eat your guy next year, and that's the guy you're attached to. So I like the idea of not going QB right away with 2 top 7 picks. Anyways, on to the Falcons. I'm sticking with edge here. I think David Ojabo is going to be a guy. One, he's a tremendous fit, 3-4 stand-up outside linebacker. I think he would be a sound fit for the Giants. I just think you can trust what you can get out of Karlaftis. A little bit more proven of a prospect. But Ojabo has the upside. And I think that's part of what the Falcons should be chasing right here, right? I don't think they necessarily have a clear path to a Super Bowl within the next year or two, so why not go chasing eliteness? And this is a guy who's just now learning how to fully play the game of football and is still learning with every rep, it feels. And this is a team that needs pass rush help. Like Dante Fowler Jr. is maybe the worst contract in football, especially non-quarterback contracts. And he's just not been good. This team needs pass rush help. And I'm not done on the D-line for this video for the Atlanta Falcons. But I like a job. Maybe a little early at 9, but I think you chase the elite potential there. And obviously a huge position of need. Then we get to the Denver Broncos. And I'm going to mirror a pick made by Mike Renner, which actually brings me to another point. Should have talked about this off top. But if you're watching and paying attention and not just skipping through to see who your team picks, tell me what you would want to see as future draft content. Do you want me to do what-if mocks, right? Like, what if Kenny Pickett goes number 1 overall? Or what if no quarterback goes in the top 15? Or what if offensive tackles, there's 4 in the top 10? Something like that. We pick a scenario, or, hey, this person falls down. There's always a faller. Could do that. Or do you want to see me do reactions to Tom Downey at Chat Sports, the Goat House, Renner, Pro Football Focus, their mock drafts, and kind of get my thoughts on their takes and the way they see it and how I think the fit might be better or worse, et cetera, et cetera. So let me know what you think down in the comment section. Would you rather see reaction videos? You wanted me to do what if and try to predict the craziness that will happen once we get to the NFL draft? Or do you want to see both? Let me know. Again, just comment your takeaways in the comments section. I'd greatly appreciate it. Devin Lloyd for the Denver Broncos. What I'll say off the top, I don't think this is a pick that will belong to the Denver Broncos. This may well become a trade piece, and a pick in the top 10 sounds appetizing if you're Green Bay and you have to move on from Aaron Rodgers, or if you're Seattle and you are deciding to move on from Russell Wilson. Jimmy Garoppolo with the Niners, maybe not the 9th overall pick for him, but if the Raiders decide to make Derek Carr available for some reason, this is a pick and play. Don't think that trade would be made in division, but you kind of get the idea. But if they do hold on to this, one of the weakest parts of that defense is the inside linebacking core, and I think Devin Lloyd gives you a ton of value as both a pass rusher, run stopper, but also someone who can play in coverage. So, slam dunk here, and it feels like he's kind of overtaken that linebacker 1 spot. So really impressive what he did at Utah, and he's climbing up boards and getting hot at the right time, right? Then we get back to the Jets. So I think this is about as far as you could see Kyle Hamilton fall in this draft. I still think he's a top 10 pick at the absolute latest. 11 or 12 right here with Washington and Minnesota also could be in play. But he's such an elite, well-rounded overall prospect. He can play man coverage. He can be helpful in zone. Obviously helps stop the run. He's got great size, athleticism. I mean, this guy is off the charts. He just plays a devalued position in safety. But I think with what you can do with him, and there's always a role for him on the field, you kind of maximize the value getting out of that. And for the Jets, you might be moving on from Marcus May. And Hamilton's just a cheaper option at that position anyways. And then you can use that money as, potential splurge on a big-time wide receiver, name a Devontae Adams. Maybe you could convince him to come pair up with Zach Wilson. That would be interesting. Or a defensive playmaker in the secondary, or another pass rusher to pair with Carl Lawson. Whatever the case may be, you can save money and use it elsewhere. That's beneficial. And Kyle Hamilton's just younger and probably better fits the timeline for when this team's going to be serious playoff and then maybe even Super Bowl contenders down the line. So I like Hamilton. You also got Derek Stingley with that first top 5 pick, bolstering up that secondary where you really need some talent for that defense to really stay viable long term. Then we get to the Washington football team, and this is the spot where I have my first quarterback. It's a little different. I've been going Matt Corral here, but I think in a lot of people's eyes, especially around the league, Kenny Pickett has kind of taken that QB1 mantle. I'm not a very big Kenny Pickett guy. He was not good until this past year, and I know the footwork's cleaned up, and his arm's a little more alive because of it, and the accuracy's improved. But and you could say it's a poor man's Joe Burrow, but at least Joe Burrow, before he had the insane 2019 season, was like an okay SEC quarterback. Pickett wasn't good, and that was in the ACC, which is a step down from the Southeastern Conference, of course. So I'm not really sold on Kenny Pickett. We'll see. He does have good mobility, and there's things to chase there. For Washington, he's the oldest quarterback in the group, so him or Ritter, another guy who's got a ton of playing experience under his belt and played on some big stages. They make a ton of sense in my eyes for what Ron Rivera might be looking for. Guys who can move the pocket, but also have played a ton of football and might be able to step in and help them compete right now, given the defense they have on the other side and the playmakers around them. So I think Pickett makes some sense. And I'm going back-to-back quarterbacks here. I'm going a little different here. Minnesota is in a spot where maybe you trade Kirk Cousins, but a $45 million cap hit, Kirk Cousins most years will give you a number 1 overall pick in return, right? If Carson Wentz can fetch you a 1, and he has a pretty bad contract too, then you would think Kirk Cousins can because he's a better quarterback. But $45 million cap hit, I know the cap goes back up, but that is tough. So I don't know if this team's going to get a first-round pick for Kirk Cousins. So my way of thinking is go get Sam Howell. I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for Howell, considering he comes from such a college-like offense. 9 balls and posts and very, Mac Brown-like. Maybe it'll take some time for him to acclimate to what an actual pro-style offense. And also this comes down to who's going to be the next head coach for the Minnesota Vikings. If, Kellen Moore is hired and he's like, nah, Kirk Cousins is my guy. I can make it work with Kirk given the weapons around him. Then pivot this pick to edge or corner for sure. But I think new GM, new head coach, they're going to want to get their quarterback. Howell comes with a little bit of a learning curve, but when you just look at him as a prospect, great mobility, super strong arm, very accurate, and as long as the decision-making is there, he plays really well. And also, we've seen him do it with bad supporting cast this past year, and he ran for almost actually over 1,000 yards if memory serves. And we've also seen him do it with great supporting cast, De'Ami Brown and Daz Newsome and 2 drafted running backs 2 seasons ago. So we've seen him do it with both, which is an encouraging sign too. So I think whoever the next head coach for Minnesota is going to be eyeing this QB class, and I think Howell's going to be a guy that the NFL is probably a little higher on than people like myself, which I am a big Howell fan though. With that said, so moving on from the Vikings, let's talk about the Cleveland Browns here at 13. Could go a few different areas here. I think maybe you wait on edge. You do need to find a Jadeveon Clowney replacement, but I think down the stretch, you really saw this team needed a number 1 wide receiver. It's funny, they traded OBJ. The next week, they put up like a 40 spot on the Bengals, and it's like, all right, there you go. Cleveland's back. They're ready to go. This is what we saw last year after OBJ got hurt. And then after that, they missed a number one man-beating wide receiver, and Garrett Wilson's a smooth separator. I think he's wide receiver one for me right now. We'll see how that changes throughout this process, but big fan of Garrett Wilson. Keep him in state too. Obviously, not a part of the process really, but kind of a free W handed there for you. But I think this team could really use a guy who can just get open naturally, and Wilson is that. And then you move Donovan Peoples-Jones and Mitchell Schwartz and Demetric Felton into these specialist type of roles, which is what they really should be playing. And DBJ is your downfield big body field stretcher, and Schwartz, Felton, your gadget, scat back slot wide receiver types that do a little bit of different things. But nonetheless, you kind of get my idea. On to the Baltimore Ravens, and this is another interesting pick. I'm going to go Travon Walker. I don't know how long Calais Campbell will be able to continue to be a really quality player in the NFL. He's already started to regress a little bit, given where he once was a handful of years ago. Travon Walker gives you somebody of a similar size and build, not quite 6'8", and like 340, 350, 360, whatever Calais Campbell is, but a huge, massive human being. I mean, Walker is just an absolute behemoth. Here are some of his measurables. But he also gives you versatility playing inside or out. So if you have some injuries on the outside and need somebody to play opposite of a Dafe Owe, Travon Walker can step in. And also, think about that edge duo. Walker and then Dafe Owe opposite each other. That might be the most athletic pass rushing tandem in the league. But if you're healthy there, you can play him on the inside, and he could potentially be your Calais Campbell replacement. So I think that's a good fit, but it's one that maybe Walker isn't quite a top 14 player in this draft, but because of need and fit and similar body build, it feels like a seamless transition in a lot of ways for Baltimore. So I felt that it was okay to reach a little bit, given where he's probably not a top 14 player in this class. Then we get to back-to-back picks from the Eagles. I'm going all defense with these, or 3 of the 4 picks you'll see me make with Philadelphia, but 2 of the 3, these 2 are going to be defensive picks, and I'm going to start with, I guess he's not here right away, but Sauce Gardner I think would be a fantastic fit opposite of Darius Slay. Big body. I think he can play in that zone, but he can also press the line. Him and Slay gives you a really nice cornerback tandem. Steven Nelson's on a 1-year deal. Also hasn't been all that incredible. Nothing to write home about. So Sauce Gardner gives you a young guy to play opposite of Slay, like that tandem, but also handing off of the torch. Slay can't play forever. Gardner could potentially become your cornerback 1. And with the next pick, I'm going to go with Nakobe Dean. So 2 linebackers in the top 16. Lloyd goes 9 to the Broncos. Dean goes 16 here. And same thing I talked about with Lloyd. This guy can blitz. He can play in coverage and help in the run. He does it all. And this is a linebacking core for Philadelphia that's not very good. And they play a whole lot of zone, so I think Nakobe Dean automatically gives you an upgrade over guys like Alex Singletary in that department. I think they have gotten some good play out of TJ Edwards. He's not an uber athletic guy, but just plays football at a high level despite it. Pairing Dean with Edwards in your nickel sets where you have 2 backers on the field, I think makes a ton of sense. And then plus what you can get out of him as a pass rusher up the middle, putting pressure on guards and centers, I think it's a really good fit. So really focusing on the defense here and patching up some of the holes, and we're not done with that side of the football, but the next pick for the Eagles in the first round is going to be on the offensive side, so I'm excited to talk about that here in just a moment. Then we get to the LA Chargers, and I'm going to rub some people the wrong way, and this is part of the area, this pick and the next pick, where I'm branching off, and I should have said this off top, this and the other mocks have done to this point are what I would do if I were the team. I don't know enough about who next head coaches, coordinator changes. We don't know any of that stuff yet, and we haven't even gotten the combine yet. So I'm not predicting what teams are going to do. This is all about what I would do. And here for the Chargers, I'd go Jameson Williams. Now I know he just tore his ACL on national television in the championship game, but players are coming back from that injury faster and quicker than ever, and maybe he misses the first month or 2 of the season. If you get him back by week 8, 9, he's a part of that potential playoff lineup down the stretch for this Chargers team, and don't know if we're going to bring back Mike Williams. If you don't, I think Josh Palmer is already a similar type of player, a little smaller, that's all. Jalen Guyton has been a part of the rotation. But if you were to have Williams, say it's Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton trying to make up for that production loss with Mike Williams, and then Keenan Allen, I think you just have a more well-rounded unit overall. Williams gives them a guy with a ton of speed and more downfield ability, not winning 50-50 balls, but instead putting pressure on safeties to respect the deep ball and corners alike if they're playing cover 3 or something similar. So it just opens up some more of that offense, allows them to push the ball down the field, which then opens up the middle part of the field, which is where Keenan Allen makes his living. So I know a lot of people want to see Jordan Davis here, and he's been mocked the Chargers in just about every mock I've seen. But I think if you go wide receiver here, you can sign a nose tackle in free agency. They're among the cheapest players in the NFL, right? Like the Vikings just signed Dalvin Tomlinson or whatever for $9 million a year, and that's like the premium for that position. You can get a cheap nose and then draft one in the third or fourth round like the Bengals did with Tyler Shelvin. He was a guy I really liked as just a pure nose run-stopping DT from last year's draft. I think you can get that from somebody in the third or fourth round this year. And then you're just getting more out of those picks because you're using a third in a free agency, money in free agency to get a nose. You can use a first rounder on a guy like Jameson Williams who really opens up that offense. So that's my argument there. I understand why Jordan Davis makes a ton of sense, takes up a ton of space, helps stop the run if you're going to play too high. I just think you can get more out of this offense with Jameson Williams and then go value spending with that nose tackle spot, 3-4 D tackle, D end as well. So I think there's different ways to address it. And then here we go. This is another one, what I would do. And this is part of it. I'm a big Carson Strong guy, and I feel like the NFL is too. He opted out of his bowl game, right? That's typically a sign of things to come, right? Like the agent has it that, the NFL's seen enough. They already like what they see. Don't go out there. Don't hurt yourself. Don't ruin your tape. You're in a good spot. And the weakness for Strong is his lack of mobility, and already had some knee injuries. Why not put him behind maybe the best offensive line in football? Now, I know the Saints have their issues, but tackle-wise, that's one of the best tackle duos in the league, and they also have some nice pieces on the inside when they're healthy. Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz is fine. He's been a little bit of a disappointment, but overall, the interior of the offensive line isn't bad, and it's a good offensive line. So if you're going to put a rookie quarterback who has mobility issues in any spot, this might be the one where you want him to be. And I talked about my last mock. I like the idea of Desmond Ridder going in the first round only to one team, and that's New Orleans Saints, given how that offense works underneath. And Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill. He knows how to engineer an offense with a mobile quarterback. And I still think Ridder is an option here. He's been climbing up boards, getting that first round conversation. I just lean more towards Carson Strong. And if you give this guy a good offensive line in front of him, trust his arm, scheme things open like Sean Payton always has, maybe add a burner in free agency if you can't afford it, or it's a later round pick, I think this offense could take a step forward. But it also comes down to where's Jameis Winston going? So we don't know enough yet. But this is kind of more of a thought idea for myself, and I kind of liked it when I thought of it. Anyways, moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, last pick of the first round for them. I'm going Drake London here. I think he is just the big body guy that they wanted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside to be, and he was a complete bust. But you pair London with Smith. I like it because different body types and different ways of winning, but also inside-out versatility with both of them. Devonta Smith has pretty much lived on the outside this year, but more than capable of moving inside the slot. Drake London has done it from both positions. So you could have a position or a formation where you have London and Smith on the outside, and you're trying to get something out of Jalen Reagor, and he's your quick, twitchy, field-stretching slot. Or you could take him off the field and bring out a Greg Ward or whatever. Or you're slotting or moving Reagor out to the outside. And you're bringing London inside to take advantage of your prototypical small nickel corner. And you have a big size advantage, and that makes it easier for Jalen Hurts to make that throw. Whatever the case may be. There's 1,000 different ways you can take this conversation. I think London just gives you that much more to play with on the offensive side. Plus, Jalen Hurts has been, I think, better than a lot of people expected, but he's still not a refined, perfect passer. Why not get him a dude with 3XL size gloves, and he's 6'5", huge wingspan? I think that would make his life a little easier. Plus, it's an additional weapon in the mix. And you have 3 first-rounders. Go out there and get high-value positions. You did with corner. You got one with wide receiver. Nico Bedene's a linebacker. I know it's nothing too expensive, but nonetheless, still a big position to need, so I think he did a pretty good job there. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think this would be an ideal happening here. I think this is a team that really probably tries to make the quarterback, the question come with an answer in the offseason, try to go get a veteran. But if Matt Corral falls to you at 20, he's kind of one of the victims of this mock and how the board's played out. If he's there at 20, Pittsburgh doesn't have an answer, that's a really good option to fall into. A lot of people have him as quarterback 1. He's in and around that conversation for me. It's really tight. It really comes down to what you want, but Corral gives you mobility, has a strong arm. He's shown progression year over year at Ole Miss, so there's things to like there. But again, it comes down to is Matt Canada still going to be the offensive coordinator for Pittsburgh? Excuse me. If so, what is he eyeing in a potential Big Ben replacement? So still a whole lot to figure out. But Matt Corral falls to Pittsburgh's lap at 20. I think they would be hard-pressed not to pull the trigger there. Then we get to the New England Patriots. Could go corner, could go wide receiver. I'm going to go corner here. I think Andrew Booth Jr. is a fantastic fit opposite of J.C. Jackson. True shutdown potential there. They're going to probably pay J.C. Jackson, I would assume. And they do need wide receiver for sure. Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar are just not guys that when you need a first down, you can always rely on. I think Bourne's been better than some people's expectations were set at. I like Kendrick Bourne, but he's a complimentary wide receiver, if we're being honest with ourselves. So I could see a Chris Olave, maybe a Traylon Burks here. I just like the value with Andrew Booth Jr. a little bit better, so that's why I leaned in that direction. Then we get to the Miami Dolphins, and different first-round tackle than I've had in some of my other videos. A lot of times I've been going Trevor Penning. I think he has a nice mix of like what the potential could be despite coming from a small school. And Bernard Raymond, though, is getting a ton of buzz right now. Huge body and has some good tape at Central Michigan. Looks like a left tackle, and the tape suggests that he can hold his own as well. So, like the fit there. His name's getting a ton of buzz, so I wanted to put him in the first round for this video. Then for the Raiders, I think Jordan Davis makes some sense here. I've been trying to get the Raiders to take a D-tackle. I've been mocking D-tackles to the Raiders for a few years now, but we saw what this team looked like once they lost their deep threat in Henry Ruggs. Jameson Williams, I think, would be in play here, but since he's off the board, give me Chris Olave. I think he's faster than than what a lot of people are expecting. I think he'll be in and around that 4.3 mark. And he's just a big play waiting to happen. Refined downfield route runner, but he can also make things happen at the sticks, over the middle of the field. He's just a complete weapon. He's an underrated player in this draft class, which is hard for me to fathom because I was ready to put him in the first round last year. He decides to go back to Ohio State, and now his stock's fallen. I know, Garrett Wilson's there, and Smith and Jigba had a huge Rose Bowl, but I know what I've seen from Chris Olave, and that is a first-round wide receiver. And this team needs somebody who can stretch the field, have defenses respect the deep ball, and Olave gives you that, and it hopefully opens up, the Bryan Edwards of the world and the Darren Wallers is in a lot of ways your ex-wide receiver. So that's my way of thinking instead of going D-tackle here for the Raiders. For the Cardinals, I'm going back to the well, going to corner. I think Roger McCreary makes a ton of sense. It's largely, get you at the line of scrimmage. McCreary, I think, fits perfectly. And maybe if it's not McCreary, Kyrie Elam, Trent McDuffie, there's a lot of guys I think would fit this spot. I'm a big Kyrie Elam fan, and I think that would make plenty of sense. So either or, if Vance Joseph's still around, let him pick which cornerback he likes the most. Just add some talent and some young youth play. Little duh. But add some younger players into that mix as well. Then we get to the Cincinnati Bengals, and going back-to-back interior offensive linemen with these next couple of picks. I'm going to go Kenyon Green here for the Bengals, and actually, once I get to my second-round pick for the Bengals, I'll explain a little bit more, but I actually have Kenyon Green as the right tackle of the future, but a guy who's played both guard, both tackle spots at A&M and graded pretty well per Pro Football Focus, so I like that pick a ton, and you just address one of your biggest areas of need still left. And then you get to the Buffalo Bills. I'm having Tyler Linderbaum. They can cut Mitch Morse and save $7.5 million. Now, I know the cap's going back up, but for a team like this, $7.5 million is, potential corner number 2 when Tre'Davious White comes back, or maybe a cheap wide receiver, or it's finding another interior offensive lineman to play guard and replace John Feliciano. Whatever the case may be, adding depth, whatever they want to use the money for, that's their own discretion. I think Linderbaum is a cheaper and younger option than Mitch Morse, but maybe they kick him over to guard. He's just the John Feliciano replacement. I think there's some options there for the Bills, and really the interior of the offensive line is one of the last real weak spots of that roster. Then we get back to the Detroit Lions, and I'm going to do it. I'm going quarterback once again. Malik Willis. I think this is a team that it's going to be hard to move on from Jared Goff. At least with Kirk Cousins, you could say he's a good quarterback, but he cost $45 million. Jared Goff, I think his cap hit's right around that $40 million mark as well. Hey, and he's just not that good. So they're going to have to stick with him. And I think Malik Willis is at least coming with 1 year as a, quote-unquote red shirt. So let him sit behind Goff. Do not put him on the field. Like, this is one of those spots where I think we always talk about, rookie quarterback, you can sit him for a year, but it always kind of emerges into, okay, it's been 4 weeks, let's get him out there. Okay, it's been 6 weeks, let's have him play now. I think Malik Willis is a full, let him sit for a year, tank again with Jared Goff essentially, and get another top 10 pick. Have Malik Willis step in to a team that has a good offensive line in front of them, another top 10 pick to add on a potential wide receiver room, cornerback room, whatever the case may be, and then put him in a spot where the roster's a little better around him, and he might have better success or a better chance of success. So that's my way of thinking there for the Lions. Then we get to the Dallas Cowboys, and this was one of the tougher ones, and this is actually where I have Jordan Davis going. I know they have spent a ton of capital on the interior of the defensive line. Bohanna from last year, Osa Odighizuwa, who's provided some good play. But I think of Osa as more really as a pass rushing D tackle in a 4-3. If you were to pair Osa with Jordan Davis as your run stopping D tackle, I'm intrigued by that. Again, that is assuming Dan Quinn is still their defensive coordinator. He doesn't land a head coaching job elsewhere. If you keep that 4-man front and you have Davis with Odighizuwa, Bohanna, whoever you want as that number 2 D tackle, and then DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons as your edges, or maybe you keep Randy Gregory, re-sign him, and Parsons is your linebacker teeing off on guards. Whatever possibility you want to run through, I think Jordan Davis just gives this team a really solid answer as a run stopper, and especially if you're going to use Parsons as a linebacker, it allows, because he doesn't have to account for the run as much because Jordan Davis is just a massive human and he'll stuff it a lot on his own. That allows Parsons to do a whole lot more away from the run game as a blitzer and backing off into coverage, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it just improves one of the weaker spots of the Cowboys roster, and that's exactly what you're looking for here, the back end of round 1. For the Chiefs, I'm going to go wide receiver. I think Jahan Dotson just gives them something they don't have on this roster right now. Someone who can live in that 10 to 19 yard range. He isn't necessarily an uber athlete, but he is very quick and sudden and explosive out of his breaks. Makes him a really good route runner. And then another guy who can play inside or out. You can move Tyreek Hill around. And overall, when I think about this pass catching core now, I think Tyreek Hill is your scat, quote unquote, gadget, end around, get him the ball in screen situations, but also your obviously big play burner type of guy. Travis Kelce does a little bit of everything, but lives between the hashes and makes tough contested catches. He's also really good yards after that catch wise, so you can do a whole lot of screens with him as well. And then Dotson is your intermediate threat for the most part, guy who lives in that 10 to 19 yard range, like I said. So I think it's just a wide receiver they don't really have right now, and just another body in the mix and another respectable weapon, and forces defenses to account for one more player, which is already tough to do against Kansas City. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Ndamukong Suh has taken a huge step back this year, and you've kind of seen that steady decline. DeMarvin Leal, I still think he's in that first round range because high upside, really good athlete, and he has a ton of versatility. And I think he's, as a 3-4 DN, a perfect replacement for Ndamukong Suh. Suh's done a whole lot to help out in the run game, paired up with Vita Vea, but Vita Vea is if he's on the field, he's the best nose in football right now, and he'll clog the run a ton. So maybe where you take a step back from years prior of Suh's run production, run stopping ability to Leal, maybe it's a little bit step back there, but I think you also get a boost in regards to pass rush, which we've seen down the stretch Tampa Bay really kind of struggle with in that area. So like the selection, I still think Leal is a first round caliber guy given his upside and his versatility. So like that pick there. 2 picks to go in the first round. I got Kyer Elam going to the Tennessee Titans here at 31. And part of it, Christian Fulton, I think, is a really nice player, but Janoris Jenkins, I'm pretty sure he's on a 1-year deal, should be a free agent after the season ends. Caleb Farley, you have a ton of injury questions there. And then you have Elijah Molden and Amani Hooker, who are both strong safety nickel corners, and I think you can have both on the field, but one's as a nickel, one's as a strong / box safety. So I think they just need to add some more bodies to that, outside corner type of personnel. And if you draft Kyer Elam, minimum you have him and Christian Fulton. I think that's a really solid young duo for years to come. But if you add Caleb Farley in the mix, I'm a huge Kyer Elam fan, and I think he's better than the 31st player in this draft. But Elam with Farley, if they both hit their potentials, and then you had Christian Fulton in as a guy who can play in the nickel or a guy who can rotate on the outside, then you have something really interesting there for Mike Vrabel in that defense. So I like corner here. Could be wide receiver. Obviously, Julio Jones is kind of not the same guy he once was, so I could see wide receiver in play as well. And maybe it's this guy I have going to the Packers. I am saying Treylon Burks is the 32nd overall pick to Green Bay with the thinking that Devontae Adams will leave. But every day that goes by, I become less and less part of the group that sees Aaron Rodgers leaving. I'm starting to get the feeling that he stays in Green Bay, and because of that, Devontae Adams does too. So maybe this becomes offensive line depth. Maybe it becomes defensive line depth. Linebacker, corner, I don't know. Yeah, if Adams is still around, then this becomes a really tough pick to make because it's a really good roster overall. depth really becomes the main focus there if you're not moving on from Adams or Rodgers. Anyways, on to the top half of the second round. I'm going to go Trevor Penning here for the Jags. I think this is just a good spot for him. Probably a first rounder, honestly, in a lot of people's eyes. But smaller school, and that might hold some people back. Just the way the board played out. I haven't fallen to the first pick of the second round. But obviously, offensive line is a huge position of need. And this puts the Jags in a spot where maybe Trevor Penning's not ready to go right away. But Walker Little, I think, has looked pretty good. And his small sample size of play, maybe Little and Penning are your guys of the future to replace Robinson and Jawan Taylor, who you have right now. Then we get to the Detroit Lions. This is another tough one because I really want to go wide receiver with this pick. But thought about, maybe George Pickens. And I'll come back to that here in a moment. I thought about maybe David Bell here. Nice possession wide receiver. But I'm on Ron St. Brown as... He's a slot guy, but he also has experience playing on the outside, and he could be that possession type of player. I wanted to give him something he didn't have, so I thought about Pickens or John Mechie III here. Both have their problems. I didn't go Pickens. Spoiler alert, that kind of gives it away who I went. But he showcased his big playability in that national championship against Alabama. Has the size, the frame, looks like a potential wide receiver one at the NFL level, and he plays at a Power 5 school, a team that just won the national championship. Showcases he's got talent. Kirby Smart liked him enough to that would be their wide receiver one and bring him back after he was hurt. But I decided to go John Mechie III here. I know he tore his ACL in the SEC championship game, right? So we don't know the full timetable on his return, but you have to assume the ACL injuries have become pretty, routine, if you want to call it that, in sports science. So don't see any reason why he wouldn't have a full recovery. And then you look at that offense and say, all right, Amon-Ra St. Brown is this really nice wide receiver, finding himself, but does a lot from the slot. John Mechie can be your field-stretching vertical guy, and then it just comes down to you find your big body possession, I guess you could call them their X. I hate putting wide receivers into those labels, but it's more about body types, right? I'm going to run St. Brown's your slot guy. Mechie's your downfield, but he also can make stuff happen at the line of scrimmage and screen games. And then the next guy to find is your big body, wide catch radius type of guy. And I think then you have your three that you can rotate around, ideally in different roles, and make it really, appealing spot for Malik Willis to potentially butt into a superstar that I think his potential shows he can be. So, again, that's the way I see it for the Lions. And you look at this draft, Kayvon Thibodeau, maybe the best edge rusher in this class. Malik Willis, who has the potential to be the best quarterback. John Mechie, big play waiting to happen at wide receiver. Not a bad draft class for the Lions in my eyes. Anyways, moving on to the Jets. I'm going to show some love to another guy I think definitely could be in the first round, and it's not Brenton Cox. It's actually Arnold Ebiketie. The only thing I just want to check here is, they don't have a specific formation for him, but I think Ebiketie would be fine in that 4-3. The Jets kind of run a few different looks when it comes to their defensive line. Same thing Saleh did with the 49ers and whatnot. So the reason I go Ebiketie, also honorable mention there to Cameron Thomas from San Diego State. I think he would be a good fit in a 4-3, so he could be an option. But it's just, I know a lot of Jets fans love John Franklin Myers, and I have nothing against him. He played pretty well, especially down the end of the year. But Carl Lawson, obviously coming off the torn ACL, no guarantee he's going to be the same guy. Even if he is, you might want to try to limit his snaps. So at the minimum, I think Arnold Ebiketie becomes a really athletic, high upside DPR, designated pass rusher, that can rotate in for Franklin Myers or Carl Lawson. So I think there's value there. And you look at these Jets picks. Now, I know they need to figure out the offense, but I don't think the offensive line is as bad as a lot of people think it is. And there are pass catchers there. Corey Davis didn't look terrible. Elijah Moore, I think, could be potentially their wide receiver one. They could definitely get better in that area for sure to get more out of Zach Wilson, but I think fixing that defense should be the priority, and the better that defense get, I think it makes it a little easier to stay in games, and then the offense in turn gets more opportunities and looks better. You really harp on the offense when teams lose and give up 50 points to the Pats, right? And they get smoked, and you're like, all right, well, Zach Wilson didn't look very good there, but it's like you gave up 50 points to the Patriots, so that's the big concern. There's a lot of holes in this team, is all I'm trying to say. So Ebiketie plus the 2 DBs I had in the first round, I think that's the way to fix that Jets team, and we're going to get back to him here in just a moment. Anyways, next up, we're on to the Giants, and I'm having to go back to the offensive line. I'm going to go Darian Kennard. I think this is a guy that's primarily going to be playing at a guard spot for this team. So now you're looking at Akim Ekwonu, who could potentially kick inside and play guard. I know I said that, but realistically, I don't think Matt Peart's going to be a long-term answer. So I would probably move Ekwonu over to right tackle. You play Kennard at left guard. I think you got a much improved offensive line, especially if you are going to keep Daniel Jones. Plus, you got George Karlaftis to help take off some of the pressure of Azeez Ojulari and that pass rushing core in general. So I think that's a huge step in the right direction for this Giants team. And I think with these players, you have the ability to take a big leap forward as a team. I think that offensive line really did hamper a lot of what that team could do. Anyways, Texans are next up at 37. This is where I'm going to have them take Cam Thomas. I gave him an honorable mention earlier, but especially if they're going to stay with that 4-3 cover 2 heavy Lovie Smith defense. I know they just fired David Culley, so there's no guarantee of that, but nonetheless, they need edge bad. So if you're looking for a 4-3 end, Cam Thomas is probably the guy here. Jermaine Johnson could probably fit into both schemes, but if you want to go 3-4, Kingsley Enagbare, Drake Jackson, I think would be good options there. But this team needs pass rush, is all I'm trying to say. So offensive line, you get Evan Neal. Now you get an edge rusher in Thomas. 2 big areas of need for the squad. They need a lot of players in a lot of different areas, but building through the trenches, trying to solidify those areas, and then once you're ready to draft a quarterback and you have a okay roster around you, I think you'll be in a spot where you could compete relatively quickly. Back to the Jets here at pick number 38, and now I'm going to the offensive line, and I'm going to go with Zion Johnson here. Played some guard, played some tackle at Boston College, so I think there's some flexibility, especially if you do feel like you need a right tackle. Zion Johnson could become that guy, or maybe it's Elijah Vera Tucker and Johnson's taking over that left guard spot. There's options, and you'll get a case of that. If you're new to the channel, I go after versatility more than just about anything. That's why I'm still high on DeMarvin Leal, and that's why I like Zion Johnson as a potential second-round interior offensive lineman / tackle. I just think he gives you pieces, and especially in a league where there's going to be injuries. So sometimes I like the idea of Zion Johnson being, hey, he's our starting right guard, but something happened to our right tackle. He can slide over and we can hold, and keep the ship afloat with him at that position. So I'm a big versatility guy. So that tangent aside, let's talk about the Bears at 39. This is where I have David Bell coming off the board. I think it makes a ton of sense. Allen Robinson almost certainly gone, and this is your big body possession guy to replace him, right? So you're trying to keep that wide receiver room in a spot where there's still talent coming in and trying to make the life of Justin Fields better. Especially if this is a Brian Daboll-led Bears team. I'm interested to see what he does because he had Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. Who becomes that guy? I don't know if Darnell Mooney is quite complete as a wide receiver, especially as a route runner living in that intermediate part of the area of the field. David Bell could be. Now, I don't think you'll get as many big plays down the field and, deep threat that you get with Stephon Diggs, but as the intermediate guy, I think Bell could be that Allen Robinson replacement and be who Diggs is in a lot of ways for that Bills offense if it's a Daboll-led team. Again, purely speculation there. Then we get to the Broncos at pick number 40. I have him going Nicholas Petit-Frere, a guy who could potentially go in the first round in a lot of ways. Just been solid all year long at Ohio State. Juwan James is a horrible contract finally coming off the book for Denver, so that's some cap space opening up, which is good. Petit-Frere, I know he was a left tackle for the Buckeyes, but I think he's one of those prospects that you could more easily see making that transition over to right tackle, so I like that fit for Denver. Go linebacker, go offensive tackle. I'm not even sure this pick belongs to Denver if they do make a move for quarterback, however. Then for the Seattle Seahawks, I have them going cornerback, and if they get this guy in the second round, that would be one of my steals of the draft. Big Trent McDuffie guy. I love these Washington corners in general. I like Sidney Jones when he came out. Big Byron Murphy fan as well. And there's one more that I know I'm forgetting about, and I always forget about it when I talk about Washington corners, so that's unfortunate. But Trent McDuffie, him and Kyler Gordon. I don't know why I said Kendall Fuller there, but Kyler Gordon, another Washington corner. I think they're both NFL-ready guys. They can plug and play and get some good play out of them right away. So, like McDuffie especially, like him more as a man coverage corner, but keep him in state. Seattle needs a corner. Big time, this could also be Darion Kendrick. As long as teams like his, off-the-field standings, I hear there might be some concerns there, so that's a bit of an issue. But if he clears through all that, I think Darion Kendrick's going to be a guy that a lot of teams like. And I could see something like A.J. Terrell went a lot higher in his draft class. That's paid off for Atlanta, and I could see Kendrick being this year's A.J. Terrell in a lot of ways. I'm not just saying that because he used to play at Clemson before going to Georgia, but as a guy who the league is clearly higher on and goes higher than the media or draft experts would see. So could see that being possible, and maybe he's a better fit for Seattle, but I'm going to go Trent McDuffie. He's also a little smaller than what Seattle's craved in the past. But again, I don't even know if Pete Carroll's going to be there. So anyways, tangent aside, Washington football team are next. I'm going to have them go in deep safety here with Jordan Battle. I do like Brisker and I do like Hill. I also like Lewison. I think all these guys, this is a really good safety class in general. I just like Jordan Battle. He's gotten the most reps of any of these four guys as a deep safety, just edging out Sin from Georgia. So like Battle here, and then you move Cameron Curl and a lot of cover 1, cover 3 looks for this Washington football team. So Cameron Curl becomes your box safety. Battle plays on the deep side. Hopefully it improves some of the busted coverages we saw throughout the year for Washington and takes that defense to where I thought it would be. Preseason, I said it was the number 1 defense in football. They definitely let me down based off of that prediction. Maybe Battle can help them get back to that type of footing. The Atlanta Falcons hold the 43rd pick, and in this area, let's go quarterback Desmond Ridder. He could go in the first round. A lot of people are getting excited about him. Above average arm, NFL standard wise, and he has that mobility. He's played a lot of college football as well. I think there's things to like, but I don't know. The accuracy has always been kind of a concern for me, and I don't know if it necessarily got better this year. But that said, when guys like Nate Tice, who I respect, and backup quarterback to Russell Wilson, Dow was the NFL head coach, guy knows a thing or two about a thing or two. He's got Ridder as QB1, so I think this QB class is going to have a different flavor for everybody, and because of that, rankings would be really different. I'm lower on Ridder than most, but here for Atlanta, I think it makes some sense, and at least gives you a guy who, when Matt Ryan's out there, but you want to do something with a mobile quarterback, you could at least sub in Ridder and kind of do what I thought the 49ers were going to do this year, but obviously it didn't come to fruition, and maybe it won't for Atlanta either. Anyways, Browns are next up. I'm going to go edge rusher here. It's a little tough to predict the best fit for this team. Not necessarily in love with a whole lot of the choices I could go with here. I'll go Kingsley and Agbury just because I like the player. Probably more of a 3-4 outside linebacker than a 4-3 end, but I think there might be a transition to be made there. Don't see why his body type wouldn't allow him to make that change at 6'4", 265. So don't hate that pick there, but maybe you're looking instead at somebody like a Jermaine Johnson or a Logan Hall that maybe fits a little better. Machi Sanders could be in play as well. So take your pick there on edge, but obviously edge after wide receiver becomes the next biggest name or position to consider. You gotta get a number 1 wide out, but you also got to replace Jadeveon Clown and keep that defense playing at a high level. So regardless, moving on to the Baltimore Ravens. This is where I have Darion Kendrick coming off the board. I think this is an organization with a lot of pride, high bar when it comes to culture. And maybe, Kendrick, a guy who's had off-the-field issues come to arise. Maybe this is a good spot for him. But also Marcus Peters is, sat out his last year of his contract because of a torn ACL. So I don't want to say sat out. Missed his last year of his contract with Baltimore because of a torn ACL. Marlon Humphrey gets hurt during the year. And then, when cornerbacks 3, 4, and 5 are playing as 1, 2, and 3, that's obviously just not going to be a whole lot of good play from them in that unit, especially when you played Joe Burrow in your division. And we kind of saw what happened there. So I think adding on to that group, I think Kendrick could be a seamless, replacement for Marcus Peters. When I say seamless, I don't necessarily think all-pro type of corner play that you sometimes get from Marcus Peters, but a guy who's more than capable of stepping in and starting and being a nice complement opposite of Marlon Humphrey. So at the minimum, good depth. At best, potential solid, cheaper replacement for Marcus Peters. Then for the Minnesota Vikings, this is where I'll go Jermaine Johnson. I think he really fits that 4-3 well. So again, it's kind of tough with the Vikings and the Browns picking out which edge you want to go to which, but I think edge becomes the next biggest position in need after going wide receiver for the Browns in round 1 and quarterback Sam Howell for Minnesota. And then for the Indianapolis Colts, I'm going to go to the offensive line. Could go Abraham Lucas, Max Mitchell has some upside. Jackson Kirkland, when the process began, I was really high on him. And I still think there's something to work with there. Played really well last year in a short season for the Pac-12, only 4 games, but he played really, really well. And I still see a potential starting tackle in the making. Maybe there's just more work than I had originally anticipated before the season began. So, like Kirkland, and obviously Eric Fisher might not be back, so you're looking for a left tackle of the future. And because Kirkland had a lot of buzz, and I don't think he necessarily played terribly, I think it makes some sense there in round 2 for the Colts to draft develop him. And plus, you're playing him right next to Quentin Nelson, so can't be too bad. At least good guy to learn from, right? Chargers hold the 48th pick, and I am also going to go off the tackle here, Daniel Falale. If they being the Chargers, they make the playoffs, it seemed like Brian Bulaga was going to be back. And outside of the quarterback position, the step from Storm Norton to Brian Bulaga, former Pro Bowl guy and a Pro Bowler who actually earned that title, that might have been the biggest step up of any playoff team getting a guy back. Now, maybe you could say Shaq Barrett with the Bucs, and there's obviously some other injured players that are coming back pretty soon. But off the top of my head, from Storm Norton, maybe the worst starting tackle in the NFL this year, to Brian Bulaga, pretty good one when he's healthy. That would have been huge. Bulaga missed this year. It was the final year of his contract. They need a right tackle. Storm Norton cannot see the field ever again. And not just for the Chargers, anybody. He is just terrible. So Daniel Falale, I think, makes a ton of sense. Huge guy, 6'9", if memory serves, like 380 pounds, 6'8" here on the Draft Network. But bit of a project, but the Chargers done such a good job reshaping the offensive line, not only putting new players in that spot and getting younger and just seeing that position group as a priority, but Rashawn Slater stepped in, was really good right away. And some of it's the players, some of it's the coaching staff and the environment around him. I can't see why Daniel Falale wouldn't be able to do something similar also on the right side of the offensive line. So like that pickup there for the Chargers. And again, just anybody is better than Storm Norton. And maybe if they don't have Storm Norton getting bodied by Max Crosby, maybe that game doesn't go to overtime. Maybe the Chargers easily beat the Raiders. A lot of what-ifs you could play there for sure. For the New Orleans Saints, I'm going to go with George Pickens here. I am going with the upside play for sure. He's had his injury problems and obviously missed a ton of this season for Georgia, but the second he stepped on the field, you saw what he brings to the table, has the frame, just looks like a wide receiver one, like I said earlier, and big plays waiting to happen. And I think him as a downfield weapon, and then Michael Thomas is the guy who eats up, if they keep Michael Thomas, of course, in that underneath middle part of the field, 10 to 19 yard range you've heard me talk a lot about. That's a spot where Michael Thomas has proven he eats up, and he's just fantastic at living in that space. Pickens could be your big body, downfield guy, win 50-50 balls, but also is a good athlete. If he's healthy, that's a nice 1-2 punch for Carson Strong, who we took in the first round of this mock draft. So rebuilding that offense and getting cheap at two very important positions. That's the other thing, right? Rookie quarterback, obviously, cost control. George Pickens, if he lives up and becomes a potential wide receiver one, you're getting him at a good cost, too. So, like chasing the upside with that Pickens gives you there. Then for the Miami Dolphins, I got running back Kenneth Walker. Maybe a little early, but it comes down to what your take on those running back classes. I don't think it's necessarily stellar, but this is a Miami team that is looking to improve their running game on top of the passing and just the offense in general. And we went offensive line the first time around, and you could double down on it. You could go tackle and then interior offensive line. You could go double tackle. There's a lot of fix there. And it's probably a multi-year process if we're being honest with ourselves. But depending on who they bring in as the next head coach, that is going to be one of the things they have to address. I don't think Duke Johnson's a long-term answer in the backfield. Go ahead and get Kenneth Walker. He's a guy that breaks a lot of tackles, but he forces missed tackles, which is even more impressive. And I think when you place behind such a bad offensive line, that skill set makes a huge difference, to say the least. And then once they improve that offensive line, he could become a big part of the offense moving forward. And whether it's Tua, maybe it's someone else. It's probably gonna be Tua though if they moved on from Brian Flores. Minimum nice addition to that RPO offense, if that is still the direction they're gonna head in. Anyways, Philadelphia Eagles at pick number 51. I wanted to originally, when I was planning out where I might go with these picks, especially for the Eagles, I thought about going, defense all the way across the board in the first round. Go corner, linebacker, edge. Decided to go Drake London with that final pick, but now I'm going to go edge. I'm going to go Drake Jackson, a guy who looks like an NFL player and, edge rusher coming from USC, big name school. There's a lot to like there. The production wasn't always great. Granted, this is USC at a down point in its history, so maybe that's part of it. Maybe once he gets to the NFL, and I think once he gets to Philadelphia, and specifically this is where he went, that is a organization that's had a proven track record of continuously churning out pretty solid edge players and defensive linemen in general, right? I think they've gotten some good play out of Milton Williams on the interior. Haven't gotten to see a whole lot of Marlon Piloto, but they have the interior guys lined up to replace Fletcher Cox. They have Josh Sweat they just re-signed. He's your potential, Brandon Graham replacement. Now you just got to find someone to move on or potentially replace Derek Barnett. He's starting to get close to his 30s, and I think Drake Jackson could be that guy. So getting help at all three levels of the defense plus Drake London puts the Eagles on track if they're going to hold on to Jalen Hurts to be a really competitive team for years to come. Pittsburgh, we went Matt Corral in round one. I think this has got to be cornerback. Just double checking my notes to make sure that's what I had. And it is indeed what I have. Martin Emerson being the pick. A lot of cover 3 for Pittsburgh, but a lot of it's like zone blitz, and that's kind of just been the bread and butter since Dick LeBeau. But Emerson, I think, can not only play in that zone, but I think when you need to play man coverage, he is an upgrade. No guarantee Joe Hayden's back last year of his contract, and he is heading to free agency. There was no extension before the year. So Emerson might be stepping into a CB1 role. Now, I think Cameron Sutton's played pretty well. To be truthful, I'd love to see him back in the slot, though. And maybe you re-sign Joe Hayden, him and Emerson play on the outside, and Sutton makes the move back to the nickel. But no matter what, this team needs to address the cornerback room because it's already a problem, and it's only going to be losing assets. So got to replenish some of the talent coming in and out of that room. For the San Francisco 49ers, I'm sticking in the cornerback room. Kyler Gordon, who I could not say his name earlier for whatever reason. I think he's a good fit here. For the 49ers, got to get better in that group. That's by far the weakest part of that roster. If Josh Norman's lining up against teams wide receiver ones, you got to draft corner eventually, and I think Kyler Gordon's the best on the board. Honestly, I might like Gordon more than Emerson, and maybe you flip these two here. For the Raiders at pick number 54, I'm going to go ahead and now give them their defensive tackle that I've long been wanting them to take. Devonta Wyatt, I think he is a really solid nose. And this is, the discussion here. Would you rather have Jordan Davis in the first or Devonta Wyatt in the second plus whoever you took in the first? That's the conversation to be had about value at that type of position. Wyatt gives them a guy who can plug in a defensive tackle and start right away, help in that run defense that isn't always great, but also I think there's a little bit of pass rush upside potentially there, especially when you play in between guys like Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue, who have proven to be really solid options for that team. Then for the New England Patriots at pick number 55, I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction than what I had initially anticipated me going with. I'm going to go Chad Muma. This could also be Christian Harris, and Harris could be like the next Donta Hightower, this blitzing inside linebacker, and Hightower's also done a fair amount of work on the edge for this team, so don't hate that. Chad Muma, I think, is in a lot of ways like the poor man's Devin Lloyd of this class. Really good athlete, sideline to sideline. Maybe not as great at helping in the run game and getting tackles for loss, but I think he has the potential to be the next, big name linebacker coming through Bill Belichick's defense, especially on the interior or the inside linebacker spot. Been a while since we've had, one of those guys who was just, they're leaning on Jamie Collins to come back and play that role for him, and he's done a pretty good, decent job in a lot of ways. But Donta Hightower, Jamie Collins, Gerard Mayo of years ago, now getting head coaching interviews. It just felt like a team you always associate with those inside linebackers. It's been a while since then Chad Muma could be the next guy to step in and become a big name guy because of it. Back to the Cardinals. This is where I have them getting maybe their Chandler Jones replacement. I really like Monte Sanders going to the Cardinals. I feel like I do that in a lot of mocks, which I don't want to repeat myself, but I just feel like I catch myself doing that a lot. If they do move on from Chandler Jones, similar body type, high athletic traits, and a ton of potential because of it. But even if they do find a way to keep Chandler Jones around, minimum, nice Marcus Golden upgrade with Monte Sanders. So no matter what, I think edge is an area that the Cardinals should address. And you go edge, corner. We went corner round one. I think that puts this defense at an even better spot. I think they've done better given the talent that they have on the roster. I'd love to see if Vance Joseph is back to DC, what he could do with this team, given the top two picks I've given this team on the defensive side of the football. Back to the Bengals, I am going back to the well. Interior offensive line, I'm going to go Sean Ryan, and this is why I was saying I think maybe Ryan plays guard and Kenyon Green plays tackle. I think that's a potential map for this team. Continue to patch up the offensive line and keep Joe Burrow upright and also make Joe Mixon happy, right? Two offensive linemen with their first two picks, I'm sure it would put a smile on his face. So I like Ryan as a guard, Green as the potential right tackle of the future, and I think that proves this team a ton, plus two young options at those certain positions. For the Buffalo Bills at pick number 58, I'm going to go corner. Thought about Travis Jones, the nose tackle from Connecticut, UConn. We'll talk about him in just a moment, but I'm going to actually go cornerback here. And I'm actually, there's a few names. You could go Nehemiah Pritchett. You could go Marcus Jones, a little bit smaller, but graded pretty well. In a lot of people's eyes, he's a really solid player. Josh Jobe, maybe. I'm going to go Kobe Bryant. Great name, obviously, but also one best DB in the country. There's something to be proven there. Actually has a higher Pro Football Focus grade than Ahmad Sauce Gardner, who I had going in the first round. So maybe there's something there. Kobe Bryant also has solid size for the position, 6'2", 185. Played a lot of football. He was a senior at Cincy. Part of a special defense, too. So you hope with this pick he becomes the guy who pairs with Tre'Davious White, and you have a really nice cornerback tandem. I think they've gotten okay play out of Levi Wallace, but in the event that Tre'Davious White gets hurt again, you'd like to have someone slightly better there. And additionally, even if White's playing, I think you can do a little bit better at CB2. Also, just good to have depth, right? Look at Tampa Bay this year. Always need guys cycling in and out. So, anyways, moving on to Dallas Cowboys. Their next pick is going to be Georgia safety Lewis Sin. Sorry, I was reviewing my notes. Make sure I got the right safety. There's going to be a run on safeties here. Ton of snaps as a deep safety, but also you just see him flying all around the field and making plays in the box. And I think if they do keep Dan Quinn, this is a guy that he could see as a well-rounded option. I know they've gotten some good play from Curse and company there, but I think this is a guy who's young, cheaper, and you can have control for 4 years. So I think it's an appealing option. And again, there's just not a whole lot of huge holes in this roster. Maybe offensive line depth could be in play here, but go out there and get a safety. They've needed one for years and just continue to overlook it. Now again, it's a devalued position, but here in the second round, I don't really mind it as much. And then for the Denver Broncos, I got Jaquan Brisker. He had most of his snaps. Again, I'm using Pro Football Focus for these numbers. Majority of his snaps come inside the box. Kareem Jackson, no longer under contract. They signed him to a 1-year deal for this past season. I think Brisker, plug-and-play replacement at that strong safety, box safety role that Kareem Jackson was in. So makes a ton of sense for me there. And then the last safety we're going to have here is Daxton Hill. And a majority of his snaps come from the nickel, actually. And PFF actually has him on their draft board as a corner because of that, which is interesting. And if not, at slot corner, as a box safety. And this is your Daniel Sorensen replacement. You're welcome, Kansas City Chiefs fans. I think Daxton Hill has what it takes. One, natural playmaker, has experience playing corner, which kind of gives you that telltale that he can be a playmaker and can make plays on and balls in the air. Plus, the next highest position where he had snaps is in the box, where you see a whole lot of Daniel Sorensen anyway. So I think this is just a plug and play. Get rid of Daniel Sorensen, get somebody who's just better, and then you play Juan Thornhill as your deep safety. So I like that for the Chiefs. After we went wide receiver round 1, a couple of Big Ten names, Jahan Dotson and Daxton Hill. So shout out to the American, I guess that's what the Mid-East, whatever it is. Anyways, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at pick number 62, not a whole lot of holes in this roster. You could go wide receiver depth. Wouldn't hate it. Jalen Tolbert, big play guy, but it always feels like they're adding wide receivers in this range. And, they got Scotty Miller, got Jalen Darden, got Tyler Johnson, a ton of guys I can list off. I'm going to go corner. Marcus Jones is another guy who's graded out really well, and despite a small frame, has held his own for Houston. I mean, he plays in a conference that is known for its offense and airing it out. Marcus Jones has held his own. A lot of football experience under his belt. He's a senior from Houston, so like that. And again, it's going to be tough to keep everybody they have in that cornerback room with Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamel Dean. Eventually, somebody's going to leave, and you're going to need Jones to step up. Maybe he's your nickel corner of the future because of his size, but just trying to keep bodies in that room, and if injuries strike, he can step in, and you're not playing Ross Cockrell a whole lot, which, as a Steelers fan, I can tell you is not a pathway to success. Back to the Atlanta Falcons. This is where I'm going to go with Travis Jones. I think if you get a nose right next to Grady Jarrett as your 3-4 DN, it just makes his life a little easier. He's already pretty good against the run, so pairing them together helps a ton. Plus, we went edge in round 1 with David Ojabo, who definitely better pass rusher. Part of the reason he didn't play a whole lot against Georgia is because he's not great against the run yet, but time to develop that. Regardless, Travis Jones helps hide that weakness of Ojabo, but you put those two together, I think they help stop the run, but also Travis Jones, pretty much just a run stopper, that makes Grady Jarrett's focus a little bit easier. Like, I'm going to the quarterback. I'm getting after it. And then hopefully in turn, because he can just focus on creating pressures, creating sacks, it improves that team's pass rush in the addition of David Ojabo starting on the outside. So that's kind of how I saw it there for the Falcons, but they just got to fix that defensive line. They have just been so bad in that area. And plus, if they get more pass rush and the defensive line improves, AJ Terrell's been stellar. Imagine how much better he could be if opposing QBs are under duress. Maybe they're forced to throw it in his direction, where right now they can sit back, take their time, and pick on every other corner on the roster. I know I'm rambling, but for the Green Bay Packers, final pick of this video, this is where I'm going to go Max Mitchell. Super high grades. I know he comes from a smaller school, but the production's been there, and this is a bit of a project. Potential David Bakhtiari replacement on the left side, or maybe even an upgrade over Billy Turner at right tackle. So just trying to prepare for the future, but also have a guy who can step in and give you some play right away if injuries do come arise. But that is going to do it for my updated 2-round NFL mock draft. Tell me what you think down in the comment section. Who do I have going too high? Who do I have falling too far? Who's your favorite team? Who would you like to see them draft this upcoming April? Love to have your thoughts and love to talk some draft content with you down in the comment section. But Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.